Hello and welcome to a new episode of AICA Podcast. My name is Mihaela Ion, as you may notice from the other episode of AICA Podcast. And in this episode, we're going to talk with Niilofur Farrukh about her activity in AICA, about her activity in art criticism, about Karachi Biennale, and all about public art as a tool of decolonization in a post-colonial societies. Farrukh, Niilofur, thank you very much for accepting my invitation to participate at the AICA podcast. It's a pleasure to have you in the show. It's a pleasure to learn more about your projects, about your activities, about Karachi Biennale. Uh, let's get into the podcast. And my first question is, what's your activity in AICA? How did you start your activity in AICA?
Thank you for inviting me, Michaela. It's a pleasure to be here, to be able to share, the work I do. I was introduced to AICA by one of the people from Pakistan who had joined it right in the beginning in the 1940s. And this gentleman, Pakistan was independent in 1947. And I think he was invited to join AICA in the late 1940s. So really, and this gentleman was, an art promoter, was the editor of a magazine, and he lived in London for a very long time. So when he came back to Pakistan in the 1990s, he wanted to start a chapter here, because the initial chapter he was a part of had, you know, dissolved, and we didn't have it any longer. So he invited me to be a part of it. And I joined as the general secretary, and then we kind of, I kept, sort of stayed on with it. So this is somewhere, like in the early 2000s, really. Yeah, when the chapter was fully formed.
Yes, your activity is quite long in AICA, and thank you very much for sharing the information and sharing the information about the Pakistan AICA. Can you please tell me your activity regarding the Committee for Freedom of Expression in AICA? What this committee is doing for AICA, for art criticism, what is doing for the projects that you are trying to protect and conserve their freedom of expression?
Over the years, I think ICA realized that artistic freedom, needs to be protected because many projects were being impacted by this, control or censorship in different countries. So I think it was almost like 12 years ago, maybe. I don't remember it rightly which year, but Merrick was the president then. This committee was founded, the Committee for Censorship and Freedom of Expression. And I was one of its earlier members. It was, headed at that time by Liam. And, I was invited to be a part of it. And I was very keen to be a part of it because I wanted to understand how freedom of expression works in different countries and what kind of steps we can take in order to kind of bring critics together to face the challenges. So, primarily when we started, the whole idea was the cases would come in and we would give them visibility through letters. We would endorse the protests and we'd write to UNESCO, we would write to other international organizations that are involved in freedom of expression and human rights. And through those letters, we would, kind of take the case of the artist or the organization forward. But over the years, that role has changed. We decided that just as a body of art critics, we could not be very effective. We had to begin collaborations with other organizations that were doing the same. So there was a time the organization tried to, have collaborations with PEN and other organizations who are really also defending artistic rights. Um, and more recently, when I was, elected as the president, appointed in January, we decided to further expand the mandate because I felt that there were several things we really needed to do. We had a kind of evaluation of the work we had been doing earlier, and we felt that we needed to strengthen our communication with the national sections because we had a fair idea that there were human rights abuses as well as freedom of right problems in freedom of expression problems in several countries. But we were not getting that news. We were only getting to hear of cases through the media. So we felt that if we had a better communication with the national sections, they will be able to communicate with us. And also, quite often, whenever we read something in the media, we always had to get back to the national sections to get it firsthand, the news firsthand, that what was the ground reality, and to get a lot of context on those cases, because you just can't pick up something from the media and use it. You have to have an understanding of the context of the problem and what are the cultural sensitivities of that case. All this is very, very important in our work. So in January, we have a wonderful team of about 16 members. They're from all over the world and they are very active as well. So they all decided to select certain countries that they had good communications with and write to their national sections. And this is how we formed a kind of a network. We would obviously like to improve that network further because some of the national sections are not that active. And so we are constantly writing to them, inviting them to respond, keep us sort of informed about conditions, about, if there are any problems the artists or art critics are facing there. And recently, I'm happy to say that Turkey responded, and before that, Hungary and Slovakia also got back to us regarding certain cases in their countries. The national section has got in touch with us.
Mhm.
So we were able to take up the cases, and we were able to write letters and kind of put it on our website, the AICA website. And it's very important because what happens is that in countries, when professional organizations start supporting or endorsing the protest, it is kind of documented. And the people in that country can always refer to it, kind of reference it when they build a case back home. So, I think there have been several countries in which this has helped them to strengthen their case back. We also felt that just writing and protesting was not just enough. So we started two projects. But meanwhile, we also wanted to work with an organization that had more experience because basically we are art critics. We are not human rights defenders. We are not professionally working in the field of censorship and freedom of expression. We are basically art critics. So we have, formed a collaboration with um, uh, this UK-based organization called the Free Muse. I think
Mhm.
that's the right name.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, Free Muse, and it's an effective organization that has a network all over the world. And they were very keen to work with us as well because we have so many members as well. So it's a good arrangement where we can benefit from each other's networks and resources. Um, Regarding the collaboration, it's going well. We when we need information, guidance, because they're professionals in the field and much more experienced, we reach out to them. So we have undertaken two projects. The members are working, sort of towards realizing them. We are sort of consolidating the information we've received. One of our members, his name is Eric Otto Weir. He is leading the project on the toolkit, censorship toolkit. We felt that a toolkit was needed, something that could be relevant for all our members. because art critics and artists need a certain kind of information. They have certain kind of challenges. These challenges vary from country to country, so we needed to document and try and cover as much area as possible. Obviously, it's very difficult. It's a very large world with a very kind of different systems in different parts of the world. But we decided to start from the Far East, which is from Japan to Singapore. We will be looking at the laws, we will be looking at how the systems there work in case there is a violation of artistic rights, as well it is, the heavy-handed censorship or whatever challenges the art critics and artists face. It can be members of the art community as well. We do take up their calls as well. So we are preparing this toolkit as the first phase of the project, and we hopefully in a year or maybe 6 months we will have something more concrete. But the structure, the framework has been, kind of initiated. And the second project we have, everybody felt that there are a lot of censorship stories that have not been documented. They do not appear in the media. They are either very sensitive, or they're due to censorship, they are always kind of suppressed. But we need to know more about them so we can challenge them or challenge similar stories in the future. And one of our members, Andrew Merkel, who is, you know, um,
Mhm.
located in Japan, he is leading that project. The Censorship Archives, the stories of Censorship Archive. And that too, because we have time, so we're hoping to develop it slowly. And I'd like to take this opportunity through this podcast to reach out to members and to be non-members as well, that if they have a censorship story that has not been, has not reached the media or has not got adequate attention in the media, we request you to send it to AICA International offices or let us know, because Sonia's there in the office, and maybe if she gets it, it'll come to us, the relevant people, and that way we can begin to create this archive, which is extremely important, because it's only through documentation can we understand the very diverse kind of censorship that takes place. Because we have, whatever research we've done to date, it shows that there are different kinds of censorship. And sometimes we do not understand the kind of censorship that takes place. It can take place through control of funding. It can take place through bans. It can take place through other forms. And once we are aware of it, we can also learn to challenge it legally or in other forms. Build up pressure groups or whatever is needed. So primarily, this is some of the work we do. Yeah.
Thank you very much for adding all the information, because I wanted to ask you if anybody can email AICA or email the department in order to send their stories. And thank you very much for allowing everybody to send their stories, to tell their opinions about the topic. At one point, you talk about the community that it's starting regarding freedom of expression. Just let's remain in the AICA community, and it's a question that I'm asking a lot of speakers that I'm inviting at AICA podcast. Can you tell me, from your point of view, what AICA brings to a young curator, to a young art critic, to a person that is just finishing their university, their studies, and they don't know how to start their activities, their professional activities?
I think it's the fraternity. The art critics, art critics actually are people that work primarily in isolation. We write in our own space. Yes, we go to exhibitions and we interact with artists or, organizations or institutions, but we write on our own. We are not out there in the public space in that sense. yes, our bylines are read, and that's. But the best way to meet other critics, to learn about their work, is very, very important, because then it gives you a sense that you're working with a whole fraternity, and through AICA International you connect with that fraternity. That certainly happened for me, because I was working in Pakistan for many years. I started writing in the 1970s, and really then it was in the late 1980s that I became a part of a very influential, magazine here called Newsline, and I continued to be their official critic for a very long time. And after that, I founded my own magazine with a group of people called Mukta Art. That was a magazine on art criticism. And because I had this whole network of art critics through AICA, that I was able to invite a lot of them to write for our magazine. So it works at many levels. You create a network. You also kind of get a sense of fraternity. Uh, a professional body that supports you in many ways, because when you attend congresses, you are exposed to a lot of critical, very relevant, contemporary critical ideas that are out there. And so I think for a young critic, it's extremely helpful to get all this exposure. And of course, they can submit their, kind of, they can go and be a part of the presentation if they is chosen. So all this kind of contributes to your professional growth.
Yes, you're right. From my point of view, being part of AICA is quite important because it just opened my horizon to different communities, different situations that are happening all over the world, and different profession that are happening through art in the art domain. Not only art critics, but art commentators, art advisors, and it's from my point of view, it's amazing that AICA is
Yeah,
creating this sense of community, this sense of
yeah,
fraternity, as you said. And I think it's important to have an organization behind you, because in that way your work and your activity it's regarded as the best, because an international organization is behind your status.
yeah,
uh,
absolutely. Yeah.
at the start of the podcast, I was telling everybody that we're going to talk about Karachi Biennale. And if you can tell me more information about the Biennale that is going to happen at the end of October this year, please go ahead. This is the time to talk about Karachi Biennale and why should everybody come to Biennale. What's the main flagships that are going to happen there?
Yes, I think Karachi Biennale offers a very interesting kind of window into the art of Karachi, Pakistan, which is extremely vibrant kind of scene over here. And some of the artists from Pakistan are well known internationally, but on the whole, the larger community has not been recognized at the level that many other, places have had their artists recognized. So I think this exposure to that, and let me tell you a little about the history of the Biennale, which is, itself very interesting. It was founded in 2016, and I have the privilege of being one of the founders by a group of people that were art educators, and art professionals. And this was actually a time when Karachi was facing a lot of violence, a lot of political violence. And we, as art professionals, felt that we had to do something. And Karachi is a port city that has always had a very diverse community, a very kind of tolerant culture, a very multicultural, multi-ethnic kind of history. Uh, so, because of the violence, people had become extremely polarized. It was, like a fractured city. Everybody was like in their own spaces. So we felt that if we try and bring art into the public space, and exhibit it in some of our historic spaces. And in the historic core of the city, people will be drawn to it because art always draws people. There's a lot of dialogue around art. Will be drawn to it. So communities from all over the city. Now, this is a city of 24 million people. It's not a small city. It's, I think, the fourth largest or fifth largest city of the world. So they will come together. There will be dialogue. They will sort of cross into each other's spaces. And that was the time we had about, I think, 11 plus venues. Uh, and uh, and we also chose certain, the thematic we chose was called witness, which was in a sort of a way that we were witnessing this horrible violence in the city, and yet there were no one ready to kind of come and kind of give any evidence. So there was this reference to that. We were also witnessing a very tough time, so it was a reference to that. And then, of course, some people took it on a personal level about their lives. So it could be, it had a lot of possibility, this thematic. And we had 100 and I think plus 100 plus artists that came from all over the world. We had, big names like Yoko Ono, who came, was a part of the thing. Many, many artists from all over the world came, and a lot of Pakistani artists were a part of it. And we exhibited in these venues. In a way, it kind of brought visibility to the city and also realization that this is a city that can have peace. That was the message that had to be sent out to the people living there, and of course the media that was only covering the violence rather than the vibrant community that lives there. And I think those dialogues continued. And then we had the last two biennales, and this is the fourth one. So we've had three biennales, and this is the fourth one. And we always choose a thematic that is relevant for the city. Like we've been having heat waves in the city, terrible heat waves, because the city of Karachi is surrounded by partially by desert and partially by the sea. So maybe the climate change is really impacting, you know, uh, it in a different way. And of course, it's a concrete city because so many people live here. It's also parts of it is vertical. So all this has led to the heat waves, and then we had a biennale that addressed issues regarding urbanization and climate change. And a lot of biennales have addressed climate change. They have addressed ecology, but I think we push the envelope a little more by talking about the untold stories of places where the artist came from. That means it was not talking a general dialogue about ecology, about environment. It was specific. Like if you lived in an island and a certain way climate change was impacting you, those stories came to the Biennale. So I think that way we were able to gather a lot of narratives that had not been, told before. Uh, and then, of course, COVID happened, and we had a gap of 3 years instead of 2 years. The reason I'm telling you a little bit about the context of the Biennale because it kind of tells you how it has evolved. And because in COVID we were really dependent on technology to communicate and stay connected, and of course the fear and uncertainty. We all just felt across the world that we were all going through it together through the technology. So we decided to, you know, focus on the intersection of art and technology in that Biennale. And it was very much so also for the young people of, Karachi and the youth, because Pakistan's population is 60% under 16 years of age. So we have a very, very large youth population. And I think those COVID years were terrible for them. They were cut off, they could not complete their studies, professionally, there were setbacks. There was a general despondency among the youth. So the whole idea of having this art and technology together was really to give them hope, to make them look forward to innovation, to dream about tomorrow through maybe portals like uh, the technology. So, and of course, every young person is like, they are more sort of familiar with technology than maybe other things on the ground. So,
Indeed, indeed it is.
yeah, so it kind of engaged them. It also showed them innovative ways of handling technology, of working with technology. So these aspects, I think, worked. We engaged a very, very large population of young people, and I think they welcomed it. And there were artists from all over the world, some very well-known names who are using technology in their work, joined us for that Biennale. And the present Biennale is now addressing something totally different. Firstly, we are very, very kind of happy to have the first woman curator, which to us is very special because there aren't, there are women curators, but the Karachi Biennale has not had one. All our three previous curators were male. So we wanted to break that barrier and said, okay, let's work with a woman. And she's very qualified. She studied curation in Sweden. She's a professor at one of the universities here. And currently she is studying for her PhD at Bonn University. So she has a very strong connection in Europe, which I think is very interesting because, it brings a very different group of artists to the Biennale through her network. She's a Pakistani called Wahida Baloch. And the thematic this time is called Risk, RIZQ slash Risk, RISK. In our language, Urdu, risk means, it means several things. It means livelihood, it means food, nutrition, sustenance, and risk, of course, is when there is a threat. So we are looking at food security because in 2022, Pakistan faced terrible, devastating floods in which a lot of our arable land, which is under agriculture, was flooded. So we lost a lot of, food supply was impacted greatly. And of course, the world in different ways is also facing this kind of drought or floods. And so this has become a universal kind of a concern, food security. So, artists from 11 countries are coming to Pakistan, and there are two Polish artists, by the way, and there are quite a few artists from the region in Europe and other parts of the world, and they are bringing their stories, their concerns to the Biennale through their art, and it will be installed in 5 venues across the city, and two of them are big public parks, which where thousands of people go every day, and 10,000s of people visit every weekend. So we hope to have tremendous footfall, and I do invite everyone through this podcast to follow us on social media. If you can come to Pakistan, do come for it. We'll be happy to have you.
In the last minutes of the podcast, can you please tell me what's the dates for Karachi Biennale so everybody will know this information?
Yeah, it's a relatively short biennale. It will open to the public on the 26th of October and close on the 10th of November. 27th is the inaugural ceremony, and that's the time we will announce all the prizes. We have a juried prize, we have an emerging artist prize. Over the years, we have a performance art prize as well that is given a little later. So, it's quite a kind of a robust, interesting ceremony that's taking place in a park that is over 100 years old. It has a very old historic temple in it, a Hindu temple, that is mentioned in the scriptures of the Hindu, sort of, script in the Hindu scriptures. And we have, different sites within the park that have been built over, the last 100 years. or slightly over that. So it's an interesting space, and it's right next to the waterfront. So it's an exciting place.
and it's full of art. Thank you
It's
very
really
much,
full of art.
Nilo, for all the information that you share with me about AICA, about the committee you are the chair of, about Karachi Biennale. I think I'm I think I'm definitely going to come to the next edition of Karachi Biennale. Even though this year I'm unable, the next year definitely I'm going to come to Biennale. Please keep us posted about all the information about Karachi, all the information about the Committee for Freedom of Expression in AICA. And thank you very much for this inspirational discussion about art criticism, about your project, about the history of AICA Pakistan, and about. And thank you very much for your openness in regarding the topics we discussed in the podcast. Thank you very much,
Thank you
Niilofur.
very much. Thank you.
And thank you all for listening to me and listening to Niilofur Farrukh. See you all next episode. Have a lovely day.
Hello.